No notions in this life in which I don't know emotions on the hope that those are rightfully mine. And so I just go by and try to prove that.
So I'm John Kane, and I welcome you to Let's Talk Native on this Saturday, November 23rd. While this program may not provide a path to spiritual enlightenment, and this one definitely won't, we do encourage, and in some cases, start conversations. We don't do prayers, and we don't do buffalo speeches. We take a tough look at history, oppression, and survival. We talk about culture, the arts, politics, and identity, and we may step on a few toes along the way, and I think we will today. But our real goal here is to bring people together by breaking down what separates us. And we do it all right here from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. So let's talk Native. But first, let me remind people that our audio streams live at www.letstalknative.com. We stream live video of the show on our Facebook group page via Facebook Live. Our shows are available as podcasts on your favorite podcast platforms. We take the video of this show, we post it up on our YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. So I encourage people to subscribe to our podcast and to our YouTube channels, where the numbers are looking pretty good, and it seems like we're picking up some steam here a little bit. But the more you check out our podcasts and share them, the more you check out our videos and share them, the more people join all of us in these conversations. And that's what we're trying to do here. I am the show's host and producer. I'm John Kane, and I'm joined in studio by Jake Proud, who's managing our video and our audio. All right. We battled with exactly what we're going to put for like the topic here. And I wasn't afraid to say, to throw "God is dead" ? Up on there in the topic. So, look, I'm not suggesting that anybody killed God. In fact, I would. Part of what I would talk about is where this comes from. Where does the whole God belief, the God theory, the intelligent design and higher power. Not just even higher power, but higher being, so all of this stuff. Did God create man, or did man create God? And I think it's pretty compelling evidence to suggest it's man created God. But we get there's this whole thing where God and creator and native culture and history and stories get manipulated and jammed in so it either can fit in comfortably with Christian beliefs. I had one of the friends that I have today, who is somebody that I consider a very good friend. We didn't start out this way. One of the things that she wanted to do in the beginning was she wanted to, in her teaching Sunday school job, she wanted to do the comparisons about Native spirituality and Christianity. She approached somebody that I know. I didn't even know this woman, didn't know her at all. But she approached somebody who I did know and ran the idea by him. And this is my buddy, Bob Delamonte over at Tuscarora Woodworks. And he was vending at a museum, and she ran the idea by him. And he says, you might not want to do that. And she just, for the life of her, couldn't imagine why not. And so he gave her my card and says, check this guy out. Listen to his show. Well, she did, and in spite of her strong Christian upbringing, I think she cursed at me a few times. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, and she had all she could do to just keep herself from reaching out to me and try to slap me through the airwaves or whatever. And she clicks it off, and then she listens again, and then she starts trying to challenge me a little bit, and she was being careful about it, but. Yeah, and we're talking about everything from Thomas Jefferson and the Mankato, Minnesota hangings, Abraham Lincoln, I'm sorry, Thomas Jefferson, and the idea that he was behind the beginning, the Removal Act, not Andrew Jackson. Some of the obviously his role with slavery and just all of it. I mean, everything that I talked about in terms of American history seemed to defy her strongly held beliefs and how it affected things like her patriotism and everything else. But we went back and forth with this, and I put the simple challenge out there is, look, if I say something that you don't agree with, check it out. Google it, find out. And as she began to Google more of the stuff that I was saying about, and this is, again, I know I'm getting away from the religion thing here a little bit, but she learned that the stuff that I was talking about was true. And then became, start questioning a lot of other things and her own education, which is one of the things that I experience a lot especially when I do live events and I actually get a chance to interact with people. The thing that I hear most from people is they can't believe how much they feel betrayed by their education. It didn't matter if they're PhDs or they had, doctors, master's degrees, it didn't matter what they were, how many years they spent in college or teaching. And then they hear something from me that they never heard before, and they can't believe it. So, but I guess my point, getting back to this woman who's a friend of mine, is her immediate belief was that she could make this connection between Native spirituality and Christianity and show how they compare and how they line up. And the reality is, what is promoted today as Native spirituality, it does line up. Why? Because most of our stories have been bastardized. They have been cannibalized. They have been so altered that the meaning of the stories, and I mean everything from creation story to, what we do, what people call ceremonies, the idea that our festivals, our Thanksgivings have now been turned into more like religious sacraments. In fact, we have to list Longhouse as a religion. When asked, what is your religion? People put it's a religion. We interchange the word creator for God so we feel better about it, ignoring the old customs that talked about the power of creation. Yeah, look, we have a story where we use the expression "Sogoya Disu," he who creates, and we talk about the twins, the right hand and the left hand twin. But these are stories, and neither one of those guys, not the right-handed twin. I mean, the right-handed twin isn't God. And the left-handed twin isn't Satan. That's just what we did to that story. The whole idea of the left-handed twin and the right-handed twin as a part of our creation story was about balance and harmony. Harmony isn't unison. Harmony is this idea that you can have two different things happening at the same time that work together. So whether it's two people singing different notes, like the definition of harmony, or three or four, a four-part harmony is beautiful. And that's all four people singing something that's completely different. Sometimes not even the same words or the same vowels or the consonants, but that's what harmony is, right? It's about different things working together. It's not just about tolerance, diversity and tolerance. No, it's not. It's literally this idea of these things that can see on the face of it could look like they're converging, but they meld together in a way. They don't wash each other out. The sum becomes greater than the parts. But instead, because of the oppression, the genocide, the assimilation, all of that stuff. I mean, not just residential schools. I mean, I'm troubled. And I say it all the time, by the level of Native people who will arm themselves in defense of the United States. I'm troubled by how many Native people have accepted Christianity, or a version of Christianity, which can be this idea of trying to Christianize our belief systems and promote that as being Native. I mean, it troubles me because I know what the doctrine of Christian discovery has done. I know what religious heretics have done throughout history. And, I'm with Chris Hitchens on some of this stuff. I mean, this whole idea that most of the violence that man perpetrates against each other has religion at its core. So when I put up God is dead with a question mark, I'm not sure that God was ever alive. And the fact that we as Native people have grabbed that God complex, if you will, that God, belief thing, And then we changed it. We put another word in there. And look, they do that too. I mean, their Declaration of Independence, they use the word creator in that. They don't use God. All men are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Yeah. And that wasn't our word either, but we start to sound that way. So I have some basic questions about all this stuff. And I throw it out here. Look, and I know there are people today, who are already planning to go to church tomorrow. And there are people, there are some Longhouse folks who want to treat our culture as a religion. And we get into this whole idea of spirituality and the supernatural. And the very concept of supernatural is not ours, because we understood the power of nature. And what could be more powerful than the natural? What would have to be supernatural? Because the most incredible things about creation are absolutely part of nature. I mean, that's what it is. So this is, so I'm going to have this conversation. Look, I start every show and I say how we don't do prayers, we don't do buffalo speeches. I'm not going to, come on the air. I'm not going to do a show where I open with a prayer. Even though, look, in the hour before I do my show, I have my own version of the Ohunda Guriwadekwa, the Ganunyong, as people know it. And I run it on if you tune in at 9:00, the thing that you're going to hear at 9:00 is me doing the opening, doing the Ohunda Guri, the words before all else. I recorded it a number of years ago. I'm going to re-record it, as a matter of fact. I noticed I got a couple of grammatical issues with it, but that's not a prayer. And I know people treat it as that. I've heard people call it a prayer. I've heard people call it a Thanksgiving address. And it's not even really that. I mean, the whole idea of doing these words before all else, the reason we do it is for the people who are there, the people who have gathered, so the people who are listening. The reason we speak these words is so we can bring our minds together on the things that we know we agree on. So whether we're talking about Mother Earth, or we're talking about the sky, we're talking about all of life, from the sea creatures to the plant life, to the birds and the animals, all that. We talk about, we acknowledge them, and we acknowledge our relationship with them. And we do that, and we go through, again, from the ground all the way up, starting with the people, but from the ground all the way up. And we talk about the relationship. And the reason we do that is so we prepare those people who are about to either listen or participate or whatever, who have come together. And I say the same thing, whether you've come together just to listen to this online, so we can at least agree on certain things. So, because look, we're going to say some things sometimes when we get into meetings. There can be sharp words. There can be disagreement. So at least let's begin from a place where we acknowledge certain things to be our shared truths before we get into the issues that we may need to debate a little bit. When we do the Ohunda Guri Udekwa, the assumption is that these are foregone conclusions. Now, the reason we bring them up, and the reason sometimes this Ganunyo can last for not just 40 minutes, but it can last for an hour, it can last for several hours. The reason is because we tailor that message to the event that we've come together for. And sometimes we have to pay particular attention to details that are a part of creation that maybe we don't talk about enough. So when we do this, when we bring people together and we have these conversations, we do it in a way that we remind each other what makes us not just human beings, not just the distinct human beings that we are, but the connection that we have to everybody else. I mean, that's what we do. But it's not. We're not giving thanks to the Creator. I mean, look, some people may. I mean, I'm not saying there's a wrong way to do the opening, but that's not the way that it was taught to me. So when I do even an English version of the Ohunda Guri Udekwa, I do it in a way that it communicates the way I was taught. And so it's about bringing people together. That's why we say, now our minds are one. I mean, it's literally what we say, or some people say, so be it in our minds, or whatever we say at the end of each message there. We say it in a way that it brings us together. Now, to call it a prayer is, again, it's emulating a completely different culture. Our ceremonies, our Thanksgiving addresses, our festivals, as we call them, whether we talk about the major ones or all of the ones, which essentially one a month, one a moon. The reason we have these is these are celebrations. These are festive occasions. It's what we do. It's part of our social fabric. Now, the fact that some have tried to turn them into religious sacraments, and we treat the attendance of them as, as like a ritual. And where I go to ceremony, I don't go as often as I should. Where I go, there's laughter all the time. And it's not a somber thing. It's not like this holy thing that you've gone there for. You're not going to see kids scolded for making a little bit of noise. And of course we have dance and everything else associated with it. But the whole idea, it's a social gathering. It is not intended to be some strict religious sacrament, like sitting in a church. But some of us have turned it into that. In fact, I remember a number of years ago, my grandson was playing lacrosse in Allegheny, playing for the Allegheny Arrows, and they had artificial turf in their arena out there in Allegheny, and in fact, behind the Longhouse, and in part of the artificial turf was done with the Hiawatha belt, and I heard it said by some older folks there, that's sacrilegious. That's never supposed to be on the ground. Nobody should be walking. For one thing, does anybody know where wampums come from? They're picked off the ground or out of the water. That's where they come from. But the idea that this wampum belt, and I'm not, decry, or I'm not trying to diminish its significance, but the idea that it would or should be treated with this, religious holy, shroud of Turin, Holy Grail kind of thing. I don't know. Look, the reality is many of the wampum belts of ours, often they had been sold, recovered, others sold again. They haven't always been treated with the reverence that people would like to suggest they should be today. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be treated with some reverence, but the idea that an image of the wampum belt on the ground was somehow sacrilegious. I think what Christians have done with all the gold and glass and ornate churches and everything else, that's pretty good departure from the Jesus narrative. They got these castles. They are literally. If you show a child a church who doesn't know what church is, they think they're castles. And I'm not even talking about the mega churches, these modern mega churches in the South and that kind of stuff. It's absurd. Again, the extravagance, the opulence, the gaudiness of it all. It's pretty incredible. And again, I'm not a big student of Jesus here, but from what I've read, and I've read quite a bit, most of the people who promote the Christian faith couldn't be farther from what Jesus Christ actually promoted. And of course, now when you talk about Christianity, you got this whole stress between the Old Testament and the New Testament, the wrathful God, the angry God, the fire and brimstone God, and then the loving Jesus. Look, they don't even match up, but we're supposed to believe that stuff's all, the word of God, right? or whoever. I mean, the reason I'm bringing some of this stuff up is because here's what religion does. It takes us and our responsibility out of the equation. Look, even, again, getting into some of the practitioners of native spirituality, when I hear somebody say, well, the Creator, predetermined how many days you were going to have to live. I'm saying, no, he didn't. He didn't. No, listen to me. And yes, Creator with the O-R, it is meant to have a masculine, look, it's meant to be a he, right? So when the Creator, he predetermined how many, what your life was going to be. So then what? So he said, well, give me an 8-ball and a cheeseburger. I mean, really? So it doesn't matter what we do to ourselves because, it's been predetermined. It's fate. So we have no role or responsibility. It's all been predetermined by God or Creator or both or one and the same. No. Choice isn't just a game. Isn't just a game that God or a Creator decided. Oh, hey, let's let them make some choices. We're gonna make them. They only have so many days, so let's see how bad they can screw up. I gotta tell you, if there's a God or an intelligent designer of all this stuff, he's a prick. I mean, he's done some pretty mean stuff. I mean, and I'm not just talking about Hitler and who's the guy? Leopold. I'm not talking, Stalin, Mao Zedong. Look, I'm not even talking about those guys. I mean, cancer. I mean, the plagues. I mean, floods, tsunami. The day after Christmas, a few years ago. I mean, that's more than a few years ago. A tsunami just wipes out 250,000 people. I mean, and you're going to suggest that was God's plan? All of those people he was low on souls? He had to take them all that day? Come on. Slavery? And I'm not just talking about the American slavery. We can get into the slavery in the Bible and all that other slavery, war. I mean, death by look, United States. I mean, it was an act of a God-blessed country to drop 2 atomic bombs, nuclear bombs on Japan. Really? I mean, come on. At some point, you've got to somehow believe that God's cruel. If you gotta believe in God, then or Jesus or the Creator, you got to believe He's pretty damn cruel. Look at the suffering that Native people have experienced in 500 years. And what? We're going to pray for relief? Well, how are the prayers working out for us? How's that working? And yet, black people can be among the most religious people. And I don't mean just Christians. I mean, because frankly, praying to Allah hasn't fixed it either. And the Latinx or the indigenous population that speaks Spanish, let's put it that way, a vast majority of them are Catholics. And the Catholic Church was as cruel as any of them. The residential schools were all run by churches. And yet we're okay with that? We're okay with that enough to say, let's build some on our territories now. Yeah, let's bring him in. Yeah, we kind of like that. I mean, they literally say, and I say they, I mean Europeans, white people. Well, yeah, they lost their land and their culture and their lives, but they got the Bible, fair trade. Every one of us that goes in with that Bible, we're saying this. Yeah, it was fair trade. It was good. It's all right. I mean, it's all good because we're Christians now. We're Americans now. Really? So it was worth it? I mean, look, there are literally people who today still, now I'm not just talking about Donald Trump. There are many people throughout the last couple of 100 years who say, look, whatever we have to do to the native people, including eliminating them, if they can't accept and worship the way we do and live the way we do, if they can't see the benefit, that it's a good trade, then it's because they're ignorant, they're primitive, they don't know any better. And so they'll literally suggest that whatever Native people have experienced, whatever genocide we have experienced, and whatever genocide anybody's experienced, if we're to believe what we're told, that it's God's will, that it's all God's will. Well, and I got an easy solution other than just hating on God, is to say, no, it's not. Whatever that, look, and there's a difference between suggesting that there's a higher being and that there's a higher power. Now, the whole intelligent design thing, I'm not buying it. And look, I know many of you do. I get it. Some of you guys are devout Christians. You're patriotic Americans. You think whatever white people told you had to be true. And I get that. But your kids are not as convinced. And I say that because with each generation, there's a little bit more critical thinking to some of the stuff. I mean, because why? Because it doesn't make sense. I mean, the earth is 5,000 years old. Isn't that what they say? I think according to the Bible, it's only 5,000 years old. Oh, the dinosaur bones, that's just a test. Satan put those there. That's just to test you. To test your faith. I mean, come on. There's too much of it. It just doesn't make sense, folks. And you know what else doesn't make sense? If you try to take it literally, our creation story. I know. There's a bunch out there saying, oh, the hell you say. That's a Christian thing too, right? The hell. Yeah, the hell you say. No, because our creation story wasn't meant to be a history story. It's a story that is told to learn about our place in creation. It's teachable. It is not meant to be a literal explanation of where we come from. Because at the origins of at our beginning, we didn't even have language. I'm not saying we didn't have thought. So when people say, well, yeah, this is the way it was. Well, how would you possibly know? How could you have communicated? No, we developed a story that literally is a metaphor for life, for birth. That's what the creation story is. Coming through, living in water, being born to water. Look, and you don't take my word for it. I mean, I understand people have their beliefs, and yes, I am challenging some of that. But there's a reason I want to challenge some of it, because the problem is if you believe all of this stuff, it relieves you of any responsibility. The Christian said, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." There is no, and that's a famous line. And what is the purpose of that? To subdue people. Say, oh, no, look, don't rise up and fight off your oppression. Because in your next life, you're gonna inherit all this. So, live with the hand that God dealt you. You're a slave. You're oppressed. Genocide's being committed against you. It's okay. I mean, and see, they always want to paint the Christians as the ones who were the ones that were having the targets of all this stuff. Well, I mean, I don't know that the Christians have inherited the earth. I mean, honestly, there are more, Muslims than there are Christians in the world, by a lot. And I honestly, I think if anybody was honest with their polling, and especially if you did a little bit of an inquiry on somebody's religious beliefs, you find that most people don't believe any of it. Even the ones who say they do. You ask them the most basic question. Try asking Donald Trump about Christianity. just think of the answer you're going to get from that moron. Yeah, Christian my ass. Come on. All right. We're at the bottom of the hour, so we're going to take a break here. But when I come back, I want to get to the point of all this. And the point of all this is we have responsibilities. We can affect change. It isn't predetermined. There isn't some intelligent designer up there who's just playing us like a bunch of little ants in an ant farm. So we'll talk about that when we come back. I'm John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. We'll be back after a few minutes.
Hero, lost alive today. Folks try their best, but sometimes it's just hard to explain. Stripped away from a lover's arms, carried off on the wings of love, and I'll be waiting to see your face again. I'll be waiting, oh, waiting, yeah. Though I didn't have a chance to say goodbye, I'll say hello in the afterlife, just like the first time we met. Sometimes I wish on a falling star, and I wonder how high up you are. Thinking to myself, oh, it feels so nice to believe in another world. And I'll be waiting to see your face again. I'll be waiting, oh, waiting, yeah. Though I didn't have a chance to say goodbye, I'll say hello in the afterlife, just like the first time we met. And you, oh, you give me the sweetest memory. And you, oh, you'll always, always mean the world to me. And that's why I'll be waiting to see your face again. I'll be waiting, oh, waiting, yeah. Though I didn't have a chance to say goodbye, I'll say hello in the afterlife, just like the first time we met. And I'll be waiting to see your face again. I'll be waiting.
All right, thanks for coming back. This is John Kane, and this is Let's Talk Native. Again, we do step on a few toes along the way, and that's what I said. So we're I'm stepping in pretty deep with this one. I realize that. And so before I go any farther, let me thank my sponsors, and hopefully I don't lose any. No, and I feel pretty confident I'm not. But I want to thank Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses. I want to thank Eric White and ERW Enterprises. And my good friends up at Grand River Enterprises and Native Wholesale Supply. And of course, a few of you, look, I did post my PayPal account. So if anybody's asking, and a few people stepped up, a few dollars came this way. Not enough to buy the equipment we need yet, but if you look on my Facebook page, I do have a link to the PayPal me link for Let's Talk Native. If you want to contribute to the show or to our new equipment purchases, that's an easy way to do it. So, but I do appreciate the people who support the show, especially my main three sponsors, the ones who really enable us to do what we do every week. But I also want to thank all of you who share the shows and who listen to the shows. Obviously, you're not going to share if you didn't listen. And my wife in particular, who shares the show on a bunch of group pages. I appreciate it. And look, I also appreciate those of you guys who comment and who will offer perhaps a criticism, maybe a suggestion. I get a lot of people who send me links, to come up with a new theme every 3 times a week. We're doing 2 of these shows here in our LTN studios and a show in New York. I do overlap them a little bit sometimes, but there's a lot of stuff to talk about. My buddy Matt posted the animated video for the Hayawenta story, the Ganawida story, the beginning of the Ganyana Goa. And he put the challenges. Everybody okay with this? And no, I wasn't. I think it was. I like the idea of creating a video that tells our stories, but again, you can see how bastardized the story got. I mean, they talked about prophecy. They talked about all these spiritual beings, these supernatural creatures, and everything else. And instead of sticking to some of the basics. And look, I realize we can embellish things for a story, but this seemed almost like Disney because it was such an embellishment. And the story, it ends up being a version that most of us are unfamiliar with because I don't know if it was all just creative license for making a video, but that's kind of, and that video is one of the reasons I'm doing this show. Because I think we do have to understand that we learned over the years, we didn't have divine intervention. So when I hear people say, well, lacrosse is a creator's game, he gave us a game, he gave us a language. Look, I'm not going to take away credit from my ancestors, the people who developed some of these important elements of our culture, to suggest that it was just all that we're just too stupid to develop a language or a sport. Or any of the things that we do that are part of our enriched culture, that we couldn't have done it if the creator didn't spoon feed us this stuff. No, our people were intelligent beings. So I will not sell short those people who came before me. And look, I'm not saying I agree with everything. Obviously, this show is evidence of that. But I think it's important that for people to understand that these stories are not what Christian or otherwise, are not what defines us. I mean, and I say this even about, again, the romanticizing of war, for instance. Look, if you're 75 years old and you're still identifying yourself by something that you did for 5 years of your life in armed combat, man, I hope you did more with your life than that. And you probably did. I mean, when people talk about the code talkers, I mean, I don't know how many years any of these guys were in the actual service of the United States military, having our language exploited by them. I don't know how many were and for how long, but these guys, some of these guys are there's only a few left, but they had whole lives. They had children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Some of them were great men, and some of them were jerks. A couple of them went to prison. I mean, for screwing their own people. So no, I mean, I think we have to look at our people and our culture in its entirety, not try to reduce it down to some narrowed view of a belief system. We have responsibility. It isn't, our lives are not predetermined. Those prophecies, what people call prophecies, at best, they were warnings. I mean, if a prophecy doesn't come true, does that mean it was a false prophecy? Or are we smart enough to say, look, it wasn't really a prophecy, it was a warning that if we didn't do certain things, that these terrible things are going to happen? Well, that's not prophetic. That's trying to project cause and effect. And why would you do that? To affect behavior. No, you're not going to burn in hell, or you're not going to go to heaven. But if we don't do the right things, then we're condemning our children, our grandchildren, and the 7 generations to follow us and beyond to the peril that we created because of our own greed, our own selfishness, our own irresponsibility. And why would we be irresponsible? Well, perhaps because we were told that we're going to inherit the earth, so we could just be meek and not have to stand up to change anything. We can just keep doing what always has been done. We can accept the hand that God gave us. Or we can say, no, God didn't hand down slavery and genocide. Some white men did that. And we're not going to tolerate it. We're going to stand up for it. I mean, Jeff Sessions and some of these Bible-toting politicians, they will honestly tell people that if a government exists, then it wouldn't exist if God didn't approve it. So, in other words, they're trying to say all governments that exist today are sanctioned by God, and to oppose your government is to oppose the Bible, is to oppose God. I mean, these guys literally say this crap. I mean, and it's not just people say, well, if you don't support Trump, then you're committing a sin. No, this isn't even about Trump. I mean, it is now, but this is what some of these right-wing evangelistic, evangelical right would have you believe. So I come down to some simple questions. All right, so when you're on Facebook and you see that a friend is going through some tragedy and you say, oh, I'm sending my thoughts and prayers. Are you really? I mean, maybe you're sending your thought. You just clicked it with your mouse and you press send or whatever else. But how many of you who say, I'm sending prayers, actually do that? I mean, do you get on your knees by your bed and bow your head and do the whole thing? Do you actually pray for people, or do you just say that you do because you're posting it on Facebook? So now Facebook has made it so easy that you don't have to do anything. You can just post it and then it's done. Oh yeah, I said I sent prayers. So yeah, I did. I didn't actually pray, but I sent it on Facebook because I said the word. Really? I mean, even the Pope, the modern Pope, says, if you prayed to end hunger, then you got to feed somebody. Otherwise, you're not really praying to end hunger. You're just saying some words. If you have a loved one in trouble or somebody you care about who's struggling, if all you do is pray for them or tell them that you pray for them, and you don't offer or perform some gesture, some act of kindness, look, we could argue that telling somebody you're praying for them is an act of kindness. Well, I'll tell you, that's a pretty shallow act. I mean, I tell people, I will tell somebody, you're in my thoughts. But I will make a conscious effort. I mean, not even effort. It's not even effort. But if I tell somebody they're in my thoughts, it's because they're in my thoughts. And not in my prayers. I don't do that. But then I want to offer at least some words of encouragement. And not that I'm just trying to invoke some long shot at divine intervention. Because I got to tell you, if we're praying for a cure, if we're praying for relief from genocide, like that, how's that been working out? One of the things I remember a few years ago, there was a time in the news, there were 2 kids who were missing. And I've talked about this on the show before. There was a 12-year-old girl who was missing and a 12-year-old boy who were missing. Completely different scenarios, but they were both in the news at the same time. They found both. The boy was just lost in the woods, and he survived, several days. He was only, I don't know if he was 12 or 10. I don't remember how, but young boy anyway. But he survived and rejoined his family. And so what did the family say? Oh, we want to thank God for answering our prayers, for returning our little Johnny back to us. We're so grateful. We're so blessed by God. And we want to thank all of you who prayed for us, for helping God to return our son to us. Well, the little girl was found too, raped and murdered behind a dumpster. So apparently God didn't answer their prayers or any of the people who were praying for the return of this little girl. So apparently God made a choice, if you believe any of this stuff, that the little boy lost in the woods was to be saved. Now, and here's the twisted part. Because what somebody's going to have you believe, well, God wanted that little girl. So he chose her to. Then why did she have to get raped and murdered? I mean, if God just wants some of us up there in heaven with him for some reason, if you believe all that stuff, if that's what why can't he just take some? Why do people have to be tortured with cancer? Or have their flesh burned in a home, or be nuked by, an atomic or a bomb or a tsunami? Why do people have to go through such pain and suffering? And so if you twist all this around, you just say, well, that way we can justify everything. It was God's will. So it was God's will that this little lost little boy could be saved or would be found and live. But it was also God's will that this terrible thing happened to this little girl. I mean, I watch a sporting event and watch somebody hit a home run and then, bless himself. Do you think that God's a baseball fan? Sammy Sosa hit the home runs because God helped him swing the bat? I mean, every time I hear somebody, well, Thursday I got to thank God. Well, you think God won you the Oscar or the MVP trophy? While there's such misery and suffering happening, you think he took time out of torturing people to give you an Oscar? Oh, look, we've got to walk some of this back here. We've got to take a little bit more responsibility, because it is pointless to have hope if you're not willing to work to make that hope a reality. Because if all you're going to do is get on your knees and pray, or tell people that's what you do, because I don't believe half the people saying that they're praying are actually doing it. I mean, that's just me. I'm cynical. But there are things that we can do. By all means, look, if prayer helps you clear your thought, like, meditation, if it's a process that helps you map out the good deeds you're going to do, then by all means do it. Then pray for people. But follow up that prayer with what those moments of solitude should have taught you. Yeah, I prayed for somebody, and you know what? I'm going to go buy them chicken wings. I'm going to bring them some spaghetti from Chef's. I'm going to bring them some chicken wings from Duff's. I mean, I'm something. And we do that. When there's a death, in a community, people bring by food and stuff like that. Geez, why didn't they bring it by before the person died? I mean, it's like we missed the point. Because I'll tell you, an act of kindness, you can't even measure it, right? I mean, a simple thing like holding a door for somebody. These small kinds of gestures, can change a person's day. Look, and this is kind of the point where, in having a discussion before the show, when people think that God, specifically intended man to be this superior being, that we are proof of an intelligent designer, No, the likelihood is, statistically, biologically, scientifically, it's just dumb luck. It's just happenstance. The planet happens to be in that sweet spot where water can exist and air and, and us. And there's probably could be a million other places just like this somewhere in the universe. But the whole idea that we were special and that some intelligent designer decided to put the fate of the world in our hands? Well, that was a bad decision. Because we suck. I mean, we do terrible things to each other. We do terrible things to the people we love, let alone the people we hate. And we don't even have to hate people to do terrible things. No, we just put on a uniform and have somebody else tell us what we're supposed to do. Well, who do I shoot? Who do I fly this drone to and drop a missile on people? I don't have to hate them. It helps. It helps if you hate the people you kill. Because then you can probably get away, your conscience may not have to bother you quite so much. But you don't have to. Look, Native people, they had no reason to hate Germans or Japanese or anybody else. Hell, even Hawaiians. Even the Hawaiian people didn't hate Japanese, even after they bombed Pearl Harbor. Because they weren't bombing Hawaiians. They were bombing the Americans, militarizing their island unlawfully, illegally occupying their lands. We have to take some responsibility for our lives and stop thinking that whatever we're doing, I mean, look, it doesn't, so much of it is just completely inconsistent. Why vote if it's all predetermined? I say why vote for a couple of other reasons, but I mean, why take care of your health? Why be nice to anybody? I'll tell you why. Because it makes no sense not to. You don't have to be mean to people. People don't have to treat people cruelly. You don't have to hate people for the color of their skin or because they believe in some other fairy tale than the one that you believe in, or because they love somebody that's different than you, or worse yet, just because they live in a different place than you. That's the reason. That's a reason to hate people? Of course it's not. If you believe, if you have a religious belief that can justify the hatred and the violence that exists in this world today, look, some of the most elaborate, iconic religious images I've ever seen were tattooed on gang members. Yeah, the Virgin Mary. All kinds of religious symbols. Yeah, I've seen all kinds of incredible iconic religious images tatted all over gang members. We don't give a rat's ass about religion. So, again, getting back to us, Native people. We have to understand a little bit more and dig a little deeper when we understand what parts of our culture have been altered and have been manipulated, have been rewritten. And a lot of it, has look, and I've talked about this before. A lot of it just has to do with the influence of Christianity. Look, I hear a lot of Native people talk about, somebody, making their journey to the sky world. Because they're passing. Look, that in the way it was taught to me is that when we pass away, we're returning to our mother, not going to the stars. Look, when we talk about the stars being our most distant relatives, I know on Lion King they say that those are our ancestors, right? That's what Simba or Mufasa tells us. Look, we're not a Disney cartoon, all right? The stars are not our ancestors. We call them our distant relatives because they are the most distant things that we can even see. But even then, we know we have a relationship to them. But do you know where life comes from? It comes from the earth, from our mother. All of our lives, plant life, every bit of it, single cell organisms, it all comes from the earth, not from the heavens. So when we do a funeral, the way it was taught to me, we talk about our loved ones returning to our mother. We even buried our relatives in a certain way, so the sun would warm them as we returned them to their mother. But see, now Christianity made it all different. Now we got to talk about the Creator. Oh, my loved one went to the Creator. Who is the Creator in our creation story that they're talking about? We don't have a God figure in the creation story. So why do we do it? Well, I'll tell you why. Christian influence. But see, if we understand our place in creation, and that it isn't this part of what religion attempts to do is to subdue us. It comforts us in our misery. How is it that black people could be so religious after their experience of the transatlantic slave trade and being bred as slaves and traded as slaves, being treated in such a way? I don't get it. Well, I'll tell you why. It's because we treat it as a sedative to ease the pain. It doesn't matter that it's not real. We have responsibility to each other, not just to pray for each other, but to do for each other, to do for our community, to do for even the people who aren't a part of our community. We should have a human obligation to care. And not because it's going to get us into heaven. It's because it makes the world that we live in today better. It makes the world that our children are going to live in better. It doesn't make the world a better place if we kill each other, develop weapons of mass destruction, create inequity so we have poor people and rich people. And we're coming into the holidays here. And for the life of me, I don't know how you deal with children and tell them to believe in Santa Claus. And then when they got to go to school, they said, geez, I must not have been good because I didn't get, a new PlayStation 4. I didn't get the latest, whatever the latest gadget is. Some kids are going to get those things, not from Santa Claus. But if you keep these kids believing in this part of the fairy tale, and you can go beyond Santa Claus, right? Because if you believe in the rest of it all, then how is it you have some people who are complete jerks, the worst human beings on the planet, living in laps of luxury? And the luxury that they're living in comes at the cost of other people. We need to understand the role of equity and fairness. Instead of saying the system dictates it the other way. Because what system are you talking about? Systemic racism? Institutionalized religion? Capitalism? We have responsibilities. And that responsibility starts with being a part of creation, not masters of it, or not believing that we're the chosen ones by some divine interaction. No, it's just dumb luck that we we're an intelligent enough species to survive in spite of our frailties. And we have many. We have many. We can't fly. We don't run real fast. We're not that strong. We get sick. We're weak. But we're supposed to be smart. Maybe. So I don't know. I don't know if God is dead. Don't know if he ever was. But I do know one thing. We're here. And the power of creation doesn't tell us to praise the power of creation. The way it was taught to me is that we're supposed to acknowledge the evidence of creation and be responsible to it. That's what I advocate. All right, folks. Peace be with you. We'll see you. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. Yahweh.